What's up, guys? Matt Bruning out for tonight, but we weren't going to leave you hanging. This is Austin Nace here from C2C to break down the ACC and independence as we get closer to spring games. These are spring practice reports from campus to Kansas. Let's jump right into the independents. The first place we're going to go here tonight, Notre Dame. So, Matt has talked a lot this offseason about the wide receiver battle there and what they're kind of working out between those guys. Still sounds like it's been mostly the Tobias Merriweather show. So, I would expect him to probably be the leading receiver for Notre Dame. Some other contenders certainly will stand out as well. I think this will be a situation where the ball gets spread around. A name, though, to keep your eyes on, Braylon James, a true freshman there at Notre Dame, a low four-star kid in this past class, a guy that I think we were fairly lukewarm on, didn't have strong feelings either way. A bit of a raw player, but definitely a very good athlete. Has been standing out specifically as really one of the few deep threats that they have in their wide receiver stable there. Braylon James apparently has made several deep catches, a couple for long touchdowns. So just a name to keep an eye on. I don't think he'll be starting week one or anything like that, but starting to wonder if he should be rostered and maybe take him at the end of startups or very, very late in supplemental drafts here this year. Let's head over to Clemson. We're coming to the end of spring for a lot of these teams, but for Clemson as well. Head coach Dabo Swinney has stated that the team will need to lean on some of the younger players on the squad this year. That's not really a surprise. They've got a new quarterback coming in, second-year guy, and youth at a lot of other key positions as well. But when he was asked for specific names, the first name Swinney spit out was Antonio Williams. And again, not a surprise, a guy that led Clemson in receiving last year in most of the major receiving categories. But the first name out of the head coach's mouth when he's asked, I think that can be a little bit telling. Williams, I think, is set for a big year this year, and I think the Clemson staff certainly expects that out of him as well. Not that you're getting him at any sort of a discount, but I think Antonio Williams is a major part of the game plan there at Clemson this year. Let's go to Georgia Tech. Not a lot of news coming out of Georgia Tech, and I'm not sure that we'd care anyway, but still no announcement on who the quarterback will be. New head coach Brent Key gave about the biggest non-answer you're ever going to hear when asked about the battle late this week. Mentioned that all the guys that are competing for it obviously have things that they do well, that they don't do well. Still think that the guy here is probably going to be transfer quarterback Haynes King, who came over from Texas A&M. But they are not prepared to say that now. I think this is a battle that, whether it's true or not, will extend into the fall camp. So if you were looking for some clarity here, probably not going to get it before then, but it does sound like King is probably the leader in the clubhouse today. Let's head over to a school that had their spring game this weekend, one of the first here amongst the major Power 5 programs, NC State. Not great weather for them, not great weather across most of the spring games this weekend, unfortunately. But it doesn't seem like there is going to be much surprise as to who is the quarterback one, at least to start the season for the Wolfpack. Brennan Armstrong, transfer from Virginia, and a guy that had some experience with new offensive coordinator Anai there when he was at UVA. It sounds like Armstrong ran with the ones. He's going to be the guy unless something catastrophic happens. Don't count out MJ Morris long-term here, the second-year quarterback there. Probably going to be the backup. He ran with the twos in this game, but he acquitted himself very well, looked pretty good, and there isn't that much separation between the duo. So if something were to happen to Armstrong, Morris would be the next guy up. And I would say, just based on the circumstances and what we know about Robert Anai's offense, I think MJ Morris is a guy that you should probably have rostered, regardless of whether he's the starter or not. Probably going to be the guy the following year. A couple other notes from that game. It looks like the running backs situation going to be a running back by committee. We are going to keep an eye out to see if anybody is separating themselves from the pack, but as of today, probably not. That's going to be Jordan Houston, Michael Allen, and of course, Slimy Shark. Those are your three contenders there. Tight end / fullback Trent Penix, another one of these hybrid guys that NC State seems to love so much. was out for the game. So true freshman Juice Vereen filled in for him and filled in admirably. Looked like he belonged out there with the rest of the offense. 6'4", 210 pounds, a similar hybrid guy to what Penix is in NC State. It has a long history of some of these guys. Made a few plays in this game, looked athletically like he belonged, and I think he's probably going to be the next guy in line for Penix's position. I'm not sure that he's a guy that you necessarily need to roster, but just a name to kind of file around in the back of your head. And if something were to happen, you know where to look for Juice Vereen. Let's go over to North Carolina, UNC. In a recent interview, new offensive coordinator Chip Lindsey stated that he wants the wide receiver room to go 6 deep with guys that he feels like he can trust if he needs to put them in the game, but that they only have 4 guys as of today that he would classify as such. A follow-up question, of course, came asking who those 4 are. He responded with Devontae Walker, the wide receiver that transferred over from Kent State this offseason, Nate McCollum, transfer wide receiver slot guy from Georgia Tech, Kobe Paysour, and Gavin Blackwell. He also mentioned that he's seen some flashes from Paul Billups and true freshman Christian Hamilton. But if he had to name a 5th guy or a guy that was closest to that group, he would point at Andre Green Jr., a guy that was highly rated in last year's class, a top 10 receiver by most services. Didn't produce much last year, but did flash a little bit in the bowl game. So Green nominally the 5th guy, but they are interested to see if he can continue to put it together. Also mentioned J.J. Jones is a guy that maybe they're hoping can get into that group, but he is not practicing this spring. So they obviously don't quite know yet. Over to Virginia Tech, there is still a quarterback battle going on here. And it sounds like Grant Wells has been working more with the ones. He is the incumbent, of course, so he gets kind of that advantage to start things off. But transfer quarterback Kyron Drones coming in from Baylor has certainly been pushing him in practice. And it doesn't sound like either guy has been stellar. So the door is still open for either guy. It's just going to be something to monitor. They both bring something very different to what this offense is. Drones a little more of a runner, more of an athlete. Grant Wells is going to function a little more in the pocket. So we'll see what the coaching staff prefers here, but could have an impact on some of the receivers and what their numbers look like. And speaking of some of those receivers, Ollie Jennings is going to be the name here that everybody knows. A couple other guys on the depth chart as well that figure to start at least for the year. But it sounds like from the reports that I was reading that Tucker Holloway is a guy that we need to watch. And he functioned as the team's punt returner late last season, I believe, for roughly the second half of the season. But he's been working with the 1s and the 2s. They're getting him familiar with both quarterbacks right now. And a lot of folks that have watched practice have basically said that they wouldn't be surprised if he finds some sort of meaningful role in the offense just because he's looked really, really good this offseason, that he's pretty dangerous when he gets the ball in his hands. So Tucker Holloway, a guy to watch there for Virginia Tech. A couple other schools here down in Florida, and then we'll get out of here. Miami. We don't love this offense, but we're hoping new offensive coordinator can turn this thing around. Colbie Young is expected to be the leading wide receiver there for them. He kind of came on at the middle end of last season. Young was seen with a non-contact jersey on in practice this past week. It is assumed, though, that it was a minor injury sustained in a scrimmage 2 Saturdays ago, so don't panic yet. Doesn't sound like it's anything serious. Probably won't miss any time, at least not once we get into fall. But a guy that wasn't fully practicing last week. So just something, maybe to monitor a little bit. And it sounds like in his absence, Xavier Restrepo, the slot guy, was the quote unquote most consistent guy at practice. So it sounds like some more issues there with the receivers at Miami. They still haven't really figured that out. Florida State, team that many think can unseat Clemson for that kind of that ACC, dominance right now. Running backs have been the shining stars as of late, and I don't think that's terribly surprising, especially with head coach Mike Norvell's past with some of these guys. Trey Benson, Rodney Hill, and CJ Campbell all received praise from the coaching staff in various interviews, but Hill specifically has looked improved and received more praise than the other guys, essentially, during the interview sessions. Hill, for anybody that's not aware, I was not, is a 5'10", 186-pound redshirt freshman out of Bullock Academy in Georgia. Got a handful of carries last year, but redshirted and was not really a significant part of this offense. So a little more of a smaller back, with Benson being a bigger guy, could kind of form a 1-2 punch there for Florida State. So a guy to monitor again, and not another guy that you probably don't need to roster at this stage, but just keep your eyes on him. Could be something. If we continue to hear reports through fall, maybe you make a move for this guy, but it's probably a little premature to do that at this stage. Talking about the wide receivers there, Vandravius Jacobs, true freshman, continues to do nothing but catch touchdowns in 7v7. And Hakeem Williams, borderline 5-star wide receiver in this year's class, sounds like he's finally, quote, worked his way into shape. So we don't love that he showed up to school not in great shape, but it sounds like that for the most part, he has worked himself into that and has been playing pretty well over the past couple of weeks, earning some praise from the coaching staff in particular. I saw a play in which his block on the edge sprung a running back for a long touchdown. I believe it was actually Hill. And the coaching staff was very happy to see that. Williams is a bigger athletic guy, so blocking should be something that he can do with his a level of strength and size. So good to see that either way, Williams is doing kind of some of the small things that we would hope would get him on the field there for Florida State. That's going to do it for this edition of Spring Practice Reports, guys. I'm sure Matt will be back later this week to get you some from across the rest of the country. Thank you for tuning in.